Good evening all. Welcome to tonight's licensing subcommittee meeting. The meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. My name is Councillor Natalia Perez and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. If I lose connection and can't reconnect, Councillor Fiona Smith will take over for me. I'd like to remind all participants of a few housekeeping points, please. Please keep your microphones muted unless you're speaking. When prompted, you may indicate you wish to speak, but please wait until I call on you before speaking fully. I also ask that members keep their questions and comments brief and to the point, please. If any councillor leaves the meeting or loses connection during an item, we will pause and wait a few minutes for them to reconnect. If a councillor is not present for a substantial part of the discussion of an item, they will not be included in the deliberations. The quorum for this meeting is 2 members of the committee. If we have fewer than 2 members in attendance, I will have to adjourn the meeting. I now move on to agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence, and I haven't been given any apologies for absence. Agenda item number 2, roll call and declaration of interest. I will now do a roll call to confirm the members in attendance. When called on, please say present and note any declarations of interest. Councillor Smith?
Present.
Councillor Thorley?
Present.
Thank you very much. Before we begin with agenda item number 3, London Underground 2021, 1 Empress Place, I would like to highlight that in addition to the main agenda, a supplementary agenda was published on the 17th of June. Okay, I'd like to ask everyone participating to please introduce yourself as I call on you. We should have with us the applicant, Ed Bartlam and Bertie Woodhead, license holders.
Yes, that's correct. Ed Bartlam, director and founder of Underbelly.
Good evening, Ed. Good evening.
Hi, Bertie Woodhead, head of bars for Underbelly.
Good evening, Bertie. We should have with us as well Jack Spiegler, licensing solicitor.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening, licensing compliance officer, Maria Dimitru.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Licensing compliance officer, Cristina Perez Trillo. Is Cristina with us this evening?
Christina's not with us this evening, Chair, no.
Okay, though, so Mr. Adrian Overton, you're with us.
Yes, I'm here this evening. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, the council's legal officer, Ms. Gerta Kuhelaj.
Present, Chair. Good evening.
Good evening. Environmental health officer, Ms. Anna Patter.
Hello, good evening. Good evening all.
Hello, good evening, Anna. Good evening. We should also have with us, yes, noise and nuisance officer, Simon Boniface.
Yes, good evening all.
Good evening. Representatives from the police, PC Tom Stewart.
Yes, good evening, Chair.
Good evening. Counter-terrorism safety advisor, Ian Raj, Mr. Raj.
Yes, good evening, Chair. I'm here.
Good evening, Mr. Raj. And Councillor objecting from the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, Councillor Linda Wade. Is Councillor Wade with us?
Yes, present.
Okay, good evening. Before we consider the application today, please may I quickly explain the procedure the committee will follow. We will hear from the following. The licensing officer will introduce the application, then the environmental health officer, followed by noise and nuisance. I'll then invite representations from the police, the councillor objecting, Councillor Wade, and finally the applicant or the applicant's representative. Usually each party will address the committee once for a maximum of 5 minutes. Following the presentation by all parties, the committee may ask questions of any party or other person present at the hearing. Please note that no party has the right to ask questions of any other party at any time during the hearing. Following the presentation and questioning, each party will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to sum up their case or representation. The committee will then retire for deliberations. Upon its return, I will announce the committee's decision. Please also keep your remarks as concise as possible. Can I ask licensing officer Ms. Maria Dimitru to please introduce the application?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the 30th of April, Ms. Tilly Barton of Thomas & Thomas Partners submitted an application on behalf of Underbelly Limited for a time-limited premises license to be granted in respect of the premises to be known as London Wonderground 2021, located at 1 Empress Place. The applicant has applied for a time-limited license from the 14th of July 2021 to the 26th of September 2021 that would authorize the following activities: performance of dance, exhibition of a film, performance of live music, playing of recorded music, entertainment similar to music or dance, performance of a play, sale of alcohol on the premises only. The licensing section received 6 representations objecting to the license application, 1 from Councillor Wade, 1 from the police, 1 from noise and nuisance, 1 from health and safety, 1 from public health, as well as 1 from the Earls Court Society. Also, the licensing section received 2 representations supporting the license application, but highlighting concerns and recommendations. 1 from the Earls Court Square Residents Association, as well as 1 from the Erdley Crescent Residents Association. On the 14th of June, Dr. Lang from Public Health confirmed the withdrawal of their representation, as he felt that Wonderground have rectified their plans based on their concerns. Additionally, on the 21st of June, Ms. Potter from Health and Safety confirmed the withdrawal of their representation in light of a sustained engagement of the event organizers with her via online meetings, as well as based on the recent submission of additional documentation. On the 17th of June, additional information was submitted by the police, as well as the applicant's licensing solicitor. I can confirm that everything has been circulated to all interested parties. Nothing further from licensing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Dimitri. Can I please confirm that then Appendix 1 has been circulated with the applicant?
This is something that maybe PC Stewart would like to confirm. As far as I'm aware, this has been circulated to the applicant, but please, Tom, you may want to confirm that.
Yeah, I can confirm the Appendix 1 has been circulated. I think Mr. Spiegel can perhaps confirm that they've been in receipt of it.
Thank you. I confirm that's been received as well.
Great. Thank you very much for confirming. Okay, I would now like to invite Anna Patter, Environmental Health Officer. Now I understand, Anna, that you have withdrawn your objection.
Yes, I did. Yeah, this morning.
Okay, would you be so kind to give us an update on recent developments, please?
Yes, of course. 1 second, please. I will bring up my notes. This withdrawal was based on a successful engagement recently with the event organizers. So we held a few meetings, as well as I was satisfied with the documentation, supplementary documentation received from them on the 11th of June, as well as the content of the SAG meeting on Friday, the 18th of June. And this liaison has helped to clarify many areas of concern. Therefore, the decision was made to withdraw this representation. My first concern originally was about specifying the numbers for safe capacity. And this has now been documented by the organizers within their crowd management plan. They presented a sound methodology for calculating safe venue capacities for both step 3 and step 4 of the government's COVID-19 roadmap. And the capacities are as follows: 2,063 visitors for step 3, with the COVID-19 restrictions still in place. And then it increases to 3,600 for step 4, which is voluntarily reduced by the organizers from the original number 4,126, which was the number obtained based on the original calculation. While calculating the available floor space of the venues, it was quite satisfactory that organizers included the main internal areas of pedestrian traffic circulation and the beach area, but excluded from the calculation all the floor space taken up by fanfare rides, the big top tent, and the underbelly theatre tent. And as such, the estimate of capacity was quite conservative, and I was satisfied with these capacity limits. When setting the limit for step 3 COVID-19 capacity, the organizers followed the official government guidance, according to which performance venues should operate at half of their normal capacity, and specifically 50% capacity for the venues up to 4,000 people outdoors, and 50% capacity for venues up to 1,000 people indoors. The second point I raised was about objective methods of capacity monitoring, which were not captured in the original application. However, since then, the organizers have explained in detail and documented the methodology of capacity monitoring, which they will employ at the venue. So this has been described in the crowd management plan, point 8.33, and will involve the use of clickers by security staff, who will then relay the information to the site manager via radio at set intervals. And they also proposed that the public messaging strategy would be employed. The messages will vary depending on how busy the site gets, and as soon as it reaches 80% of capacity, a one-in, one-out system would start operating. So I found this methodology quite satisfactory, and I decided not to propose a condition according to this concern, because my doubts here were resolved. Then another concern was around managing the turnout at peak times. Since I lodged my original representations, the organizers have presented a robust plan for management of turnout at peak times via a public messaging system, combined with the use of a virtual queuing app. Actually, a demo of this app will be presented to many colleagues and myself next week. In the case when queuing is still necessary, a substantial space within Empress Place have been designated for this purpose, and this is separate from queuing space at the Prince Pub. A zigzag queue will be formed in this location in order to fully utilize the available space. This area, which I visited and visually assessed as very ample and broad, it is estimated is capable of containing up to 800 people in a queue. As far as the safe crowd dispersal is concerned, this has also been recently included within the crowd management plan. The performance programming has been scheduled in a way to support gradual egress, so the performances would end at different times, and not to coincide, and to facilitate this gradual egress. Staggered close down of bars and attractions starting from this closest to the exits will be applied. Customers will be also encouraged to use the toilets and dispose of drinking cups before leaving the site. Visual signage and verbal cues to direct people to appropriate stations will be used, and the Lily Road will be divided between northern and southern parts, and there will be signage to direct customers along the northern pathway for Earls Court Station and the southern pathway for West Brompton Station. So this also seemed quite in-depth and satisfactory description of the crowd dispersal to me. However, there were some outstanding concerns that the organizers committed to work on. This would be preparing a communication strategy and supplementing the dispersal plan to account for the scheduled tube closures in the area, as well as choosing an appropriate location for a taxi or Uber drop-off point. And this is to be agreed with the highways representatives. The original drop-off point was located in Seagrave Road, but this was contested by the London Ambulance Service as an unsuitable location. As far as the security staffing levels are concerned, we were concerned originally they were quite low, and this concern is still outstanding to some extent. However, the organizers gave us some confidence, describing the dynamic risk assessment which they will be applying on site throughout the duration of the festival, and also the assurance that they would be in contact with us on a regular basis, and the willingness to participate in bi-monthly SAG meetings to potentially review the security staffing levels. They also assured us they've been drawing on the same, cooperating with the same reputable security company for the last several years, and never had any problems organizing additional staff to help at a short notice. Apparently, the current assurance from the firm is that they would supply additional staff within 1 to 2 hours of a request being made by the venue management. I also raised some concerns around medical assistance. They've been resolved successfully with the London Ambulance Service, so I'm fine not to make any further comments on that point. As for emergency procedures on site, contingency plans have been submitted by the organizers on the 11th of June, and the Underbelly Limited agreed to prepare several emergency scenarios, which will be then presented to the local authority officers and emergency services representatives during a desktop exercise. This is due to take place next week, is already scheduled for next week. All the risk assessments submitted, they're quite comprehensive, and my comments have been taken into account. Some amendments were made by the organizers, so I was quite satisfied with that. One point which I noticed was still outstanding was the original condition 25 of the proposed set of conditions lodged by the applicant with their first application, and that was regarding the use of glass on site. And although I verbally confirmed with the organizers that this would be modified to say that no glass would be used throughout the site apart from wine being sold by the bottle, the original condition was still kept, so I just proposed a slight variation to this condition, and this was sent to the organizers today. So that's all I wanted to say, and just the one summarizing sentence would be that we believe, we would have hopefully, based on the liaison today, a good working relationship throughout the venue, and relying on this bi-monthly SAG meetings and any potential meetings, in between with the organizers to address any emerging health and safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thatcher, for the update. Can you, we're going to have a session later where we may ask some questions about your update, but just to,
yes,
for the purpose of clarity at this stage, can you please confirm that you have seen Appendix 1?
I haven't seen Appendix 1, no.
Of the exempt information?
No, I haven't.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the update. I would now like to invite Mr. Simon Boniface, please, from Noise and Nuisance.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My colleague James had raised an objection on behalf of the Council's Noise and Nuisance team. And at the time, we had concerns about two issues: noise from the site itself and their operations on site, and noise from the dispersal of crowds. The noise management plan, which was submitted to the council as part of the application process, has largely addressed our concerns about noise from the site. Conditions, and as a fallback, our nuisance provisions under the Environmental Protection Act can address the noise emissions from crowds, and more specifically from music and amplified noise from the site. And so we're quite satisfied that shouldn't be an issue, and we have steps to take if it becomes an issue. The outstanding matter of contention is that of dispersal. This premises would in effect form the largest licensed premises in the borough over the course of the summer if the license is granted, with a capacity of up to 3,600 people. We received verbal assurances largely based on the experience of the applicants and other sites that dispersal will be a gradual process, that it will be a family event, that people will quietly disperse in the venue over a period of time. And whilst they can rely to some degree on their experience at a different site, you know, these are new times, this is a new site. We don't know for certain what the capacity numbers are going to be like on any given day, whether the sun is shining, whether it's a weekend, where there's other events across London which would normally take place, which aren't taking place, and how that may affect demand. And so we're concerned about the potential of 3,600 people on a capacity night dispersing from the venue, and in particular, the Earl's Court station, because the most efficient route for members of the public on foot to disperse from Earl's Court involves walking down residential streets. And within the dispersal policy, the applicants have spoken largely about signage. Verbally, they've advised for the first week or two of the operation, they may have some marshalling, some stewards to usher their patrons away from those residential streets. In normal circumstances, for a smaller venue, or for a venue operating over one weekend or 2 weekends, you know, that may not be such a concern. But our concern is that this sort of almost 10-week period throughout the summer, if something goes wrong, if there's a problem, if we're finding that they are filled to capacity on certain days, and week after week we get large footfalls of people, maybe inebriated or excited, in summer days when windows are open, walking down those residential roads, you know, that's a huge change for the residents of those streets in Kensington and Chelsea. So whilst we understand the applicant may not wish to provide stewarding every single night and commit to that at this stage when they may have very low numbers during the week, this is something that the operators can build on through the experience of running the site over a 10-week period. We would like to have them to have the flexibility of putting on stewarding, additional stewarding, on the nights which they understand there could be problems, on the nights they understand they're very busy. Through experience, they might find that Friday and Saturdays they receive complaints and we've observed problems, or for particular performances, or you know, that it's entirely weather dependent as to when they're filled to capacity, and they have to have a dynamic assessment of operational changes a couple of days in advance of each working night. So whilst we haven't suggested that we condition stewarding every single night of this 10-week period, we need more than the assurance of signs and that the first week or two will be monitored. If that is addressed, and we have a certain degree of assurance that those residents won't be disturbed for 10 weeks on the trot, then our concerns will be adequately addressed. And if they're not, and if it's not included in the conditions, our powers don't allow us to take any sort of enforcement action to remedy this problem of crowds dispersing, and that may persist all the way through the summer. So it's a self-contained, quite straightforward issue. The complex issues of music and so forth have been addressed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boniface. I would now like to please invite PC Tom Stewart, please, together with Mr. Ian Raj.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors, and good evening, committee. The MPS are maintaining its representation on the grounds of the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. It is important to note that the police do not object to the granting of this premises licence in its entirety. It is, however, important to ensure that the premises promotes the licensing objectives during the period that London Wonderground event is due to take place. And this is achieved in part by the addition of conditions upon the premises licence. The police and the applicant have been able to agree the majority of conditions proposed by the police. Many of these conditions have been agreed in the last few hours. I have submitted to the committee a list of the conditions that have been agreed, and I apologise for the lateness and the 11th hour edition of that submission, but I hope it helps you in your deliberations. Of the 18 conditions proposed in my original representation, one condition remains to be agreed upon. This condition is condition number 1, which is in regards to the CCTV condition in the premises. The original condition requested by police is that CCTV is continuously monitored whilst the premises is open for licensed activities. This was countered by the applicant, who requested that the condition states that the CCTV would be monitored once the capacity reaches 1,250 customers. The police were willing to compromise the number of the capacity down to 501 customers. However, an agreement has not yet been reached between the police and the applicant. The police believe that the monitoring of the CCTV will play a vital role in the proactive detection of crime and disorder, and as such, request that the CCTV is monitored at all times. However, if the committee are minded to amend the condition, then the police will be willing to accept that the CCTV would be monitored after the capacity reaches 501. I'll be happy to answer any further questions in regards to that condition further into the committee. The police are also requesting a condition in addition to my original submission in regards to the premises being ticketed during the August bank holiday weekend, which would be inclusive of Friday the 27th, Saturday 28th, Sunday the 29th, and Monday the 30th of August. The police feel this condition is necessary following the announcement that this year's Notting Hill Carnival has been postponed, and the NPS feels there is a real risk that the premises licence, if granted, could potentially attract a significant number of carnival goers who would be initially attending the postponed Notting Hill Carnival. A way of mitigating some of the risks around this would be to ensure that the bank holiday weekend is ticketed so the numbers attending can be monitored. Currently, as the premises intends to allow free and unticketed entry to the main licensable area, I feel that there's a real risk that this could lead to an unmanageable number of attendees. The other conditions that have been agreed mainly focus around the inclusion of a minimum number of SIA licensed security, and following long discussions today, we have come to an agreement with the applicant, but also I'm happy to discuss those conditions with yourselves if you have any questions. And as you said, also with me or representing the NPS today is Ian Rudge, who is a CTSA, a counterterrorism security advisor, who I've invited along to answer any questions you may have in regards to counterterrorism, as we've taken as the counterterrorism taken quite an interest in this application due to the timing and its location. So I'm sure Ian will be happy to answer any particular questions that you might have, and I'm happy to answer any other questions regarding any of the conditions that have recently been agreed with the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart, and thank you very much as well, Mr. Raj. I'm conscious that Appendix 1 is an exempt appendix under the license, under Section 14 of the Licensing Act 2003, Regulation 2005. So if we need to discuss in more specific detail the content of the appendix, I will request our committee coordinator to please lead us onto a breakout room for further discussion. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite Councillor Linda Wade from the RBKC. Over to you.
Thank you.
Wade.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak to the committee tonight. While I welcome meanwhile use of the site, I would have liked to see more tangible benefits for Earls Court Ward, such as the promotion of hotels and businesses. My main concern in this application is the lack of planning consideration of the impact of residents of Earls Court and Redcliffe wards, principally around noise and nuisance, dispersal, ASB, and parking. This is going to be a large-scale 3-month event advertised London-wide at a time when many will not have been able to get away. Therefore, this cannot be considered simply as a local event. It is anticipated there'll be approximately 3,600 visitors coming to the event, but it has not been specified as being at specific times. There are clearly going to be two sets of demographics, the families in the day and in general in the evening will have a completely different demographic. And so marshalling is key to how this operates. And it must be reviewed in how each demographic works. The two main tube links are within Kensington and Chelsea, Earls Court and West Brompton. West Brompton does not have the capacity and doesn't have the wide-ranging links. The applicant has centered their marshalling strategy around their immediate area, but has failed to consider the marshalling required to ensure the safety and security of the residential streets of Eardley Crescent, Kempsford Gardens, Cramer Mews and Brompton Cemetery. We therefore require effective marshalling from the station to the venue via Old Brompton Road and going up Warwick Road and vice versa after each of the sessions. And we insist that this is after the Prince shuts, because we feel that the later demographic will move on to the Prince because the licensing at the Prince is later, particularly on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. This will become particularly important when I feel that the marshalling should continue until complete dispersal of the area has been achieved. There's been a request for directional posters, but these are very discreet and you can't really read them. I've tried squinting at them. We need to ensure that all advertising and promotional material, that parking restrictions are mentioned, that marshals at the end of the residential streets inform visitors of the nearest available public parking. It's understood that the tented events have taken into consideration the level of noise, but there's concern around the noise to be generated by visitors on the rides and the refreshment stands. At present, residents in Eardley Crescent are already complaining about noise of the music and noise from the Prince. So this venue cannot be seen as separate from the main event on this occasion as its terminal hour is later. With the anticipated 3,600 visitors per day, there are insufficient lavatories in place. I would like to ask for a commitment for a street cleaning and litter team to cover Kensington and Chelsea, as well as the immediate area, and as and when required, with marshals checking and reporting back. I would like to see a review mechanism inserted into the conditions to ensure that if it's established that there are insufficient lavatories to meet demand, that more open, and would like the applicant to come forward with more backstop provision. A 24/7 dedicated telephone number should be available for residents to complain to related noise, light pollution, ASB, parking, litter, and other related issues to the event. This is particularly important considering apparently you're amalgamating your noise, nuisance and ASB departments. Are there going to be sound monitors on the site? And can there be sound monitors placed in some of the RBKC properties as a safeguard? Deliveries to the site. These van and delivery vehicles should be informed in advance not to use Eardley Crescent as an exit point to Warwick Road. Waste disposal, particularly of bottles, should be not after 22 hours and not before 7 a.m. Thank you. I do have some questions of the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Wade, for joining us this evening. Okay, I would now like to invite the applicant or the applicant's licensing solicitor, please. Can you please address the comments which have been previously made and the concerns that are still remaining from the different parties that have made representations this evening, please?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll do some brief introductions and then I'll get stuck right into the outstanding concerns which have been flagged this evening.
And sorry to interrupt. And I should say I'm going to use chair's discretion, bearing in mind that we've given some to the other parties. I will give you 10 minutes.
Thank you. I think we'll be there or thereabouts. If we're slightly over, please do feel free to interrupt me. But I'm hoping what I will say will help address any possible questions. But it will be there or thereabouts. Thank you. The application before you is for a time-limited premises license for 12 weeks only, and the license proposals are consistent with the planning permission recently granted by your planning authority. I'm grateful to your officers for including my submissions and the event management plan in the additional report pack. And I appreciate the EMP is a long document, but I hope you will agree it is comprehensive and offers members reassurances in respect of the management of the event, particularly when bearing in mind some of the concerns raised this evening. I ask you to please bear in mind that this is by its nature a constantly evolving and updated document, with the applicants always willing to engage with your safety advisory group to incorporate their feedback in all aspects of the event planning and management. The applicant company has a very impressive 20+ years reputation for hosting a broad range of affordable, accessible cultural entertainment events in central London and further afield. And they have long-standing, strong and cooperative working relationships with a number of the local authorities. We invite you to consider this applicant as a highly professional and experienced operator that is trusted in Westminster, Edinburgh and Lambeth, and can be trusted by you too. As you've heard, the applicant has been working very closely with the Safety Advisory Group, and their expert advice and invaluable input is very much appreciated. The last SAG meeting took place on Friday. It was a positive meeting where the applicant was able to address a number of outstanding concerns. I think I'm correct in saying that nobody, not even those that have submitted representations, do not want this event to happen. In fact, it is welcomed, and rightly so, and we are asking you to help the parties to determine a relatively narrow set of issues to ensure that this exciting cultural and family-friendly event can happen in your borough. At this stage, Chair, please may I now hand you to Mr. Ed Bartlam to tell you a little more about Underbelly and this summer's proposals at Earl's Court, and then I'll address you more specifically on the concerns raised. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Bartlam.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everybody. And thank you, Jack. Underbelly, we're hugely excited to have the opportunity to bring this new cultural event for London to Earl's Court this summer. As a live entertainment company, Underbelly has at heart two key ambitions: accessibility and affordability. Our programme of shows is wide-ranging, and it's got a particularly strong focus on family shows. We've got everything planned from Fireman Sam Live to International Circus from Ethiopia to a number of singing shows direct from the Sydney Opera House. And we're also delighted to include a number of local community arts companies in our programme. These include the Earl's Court Film Festival, a showcase performance from Lambda students, and a matinee at the musicals performance from the Earl's Courtiers. Our aim has always been to create a programme of shows that caters to all demographics and all ages, and tied to this is affordability. The very vast majority of shows are between £10 and £20, and we've committed to a scheme that will see thousands of discounted and free tickets made available to the local community around Earl's Court. It is also worth noting that we'll be running a training academy as part of this event, and that's going to give 18 to 20 young people from the borough a hands-on training programme in event and live entertainment management at London Wonderground. I can also reveal that we'll be running this training academy in conjunction with the Lyric Hammersmith and their young people's programme. The whole site will be designed and delivered to the highest standards that both stakeholders and the public expect from an Underbelly event. And to this point, and Jack mentioned it, I'd like to stress our 21 years experience as a major event producer, from our work at the Edinburgh Festival to our long-running Underbelly Festival on the South Bank to the Christmas events we deliver for Westminster City Council, Leicester Square and Trafalgar Square. As you've heard, robust plans around stewarding, security, counter-terrorism, deliveries, waste cleansing, noise and audience ingress and dispersal have been developed in conjunction with officers and agencies. And these plans have been discussed in detail at the recent Safety Advisory Group meeting, and they'll be further developed and scrutinised at a scheduled LBHF SAG meeting prior to the start of the event, and then ongoing Safety Advisory Group meetings during the event. And at this point, I think it's worth noting that we, the applicant, were the ones that suggested and proposed a bi-monthly SAG meeting during the event, because we want that engagement and collaboration with the local authority to be fluid and changing, understanding that this is a new event and things will change and evolve as we go on. COVID and suitable mitigations are at the forefront of our minds. It's worth noting that Underbelly was one of the first event companies to launch COVID secure temporary sites last summer. For London Wonderground, our performance tents all have a 1 metre plus seating configuration, which is what we're on sale with now, and it has a capacity which can be increased in line with government guidelines. Thorough information on our COVID mitigation plans are detailed in the event management plan, but key measures include track and trace and bi-weekly lateral flow tests, a cashless and contactless site, multiple hand sanitizing points, and thorough cleaning protocols. And finally, I do want to stress that this is a family-friendly event. It's designed to give people of the borough and a wider West London audience a valuable and much-needed dose of fun and entertainment at a time when so many people have been without these things. And we will deliver this to the highest of standards, taking advantage of our substantial experience in live events, and provide first and foremost a safe and well-managed event site, coupled with some fantastic things for the widest possible range of customers to enjoy at London Wonderground. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Turning to the representations and the concerns raised, Chair, if I may reiterate that most, if not all of those raising concerns have supported the event. They just want to make sure the right controls and safeguards are in place. In respect of those concerns, firstly, original concerns that the event is not ticketed and as a result, crowd management and capacity limits. I was going to address you on that, but I'm really grateful that Ms. Pater has already helpfully done so. So I won't take any more of your time, but of course, happy to answer any questions. Secondly, on dispersal, a carefully drafted dispersal policy has been summarised in section 14 of the EMP and included in more detail in the crowd management plan. The applicant has taken on board the really helpful comments of not only the SAG, but also invaluable local feedback provided by the Earls Court Society, the Earls Court Square Residents Association, the Eardley Crescent Residents Association, and of course, Councillor Wade. This helpful feedback has directly impacted upon the applicant's dispersal strategy, even with the position directional signage and marshals to move people out of the area swiftly without travelling via some of the more sensitive routes identified by these local stakeholders. This is now substantially agreed with the SAG and is of course also subject to continuous review and input. This means that any outstanding or ongoing concerns, whether they're from Councillor Wade, Mr. Boniface or Mr. Rawlinson, can be constantly and dynamically risk assessed and addressed. The applicant absolutely, and you've heard from Ed, agrees to that constant dialogue with members of the SAG in this regard. Mr. Boniface's comments were made before PC Stewart was able to present his conditions, which I hope helps to address Mr. Boniface's concerns, in particular conditions 10 and 17, because they relate to numbers of SIA operatives on duty, and also condition 17 conditions the dispersal procedures on the licence by way of condition rather than just left to the EMP. Thirdly, noise. I was going to address you on that, but I'm really grateful to Mr. Boniface and Mr. Rawlinson. You've heard from them that they're largely happy with the noise management plan. Fourthly, traffic management. Traffic management plan supported by well thought through directions on online platforms has been prepared and is largely agreed. Fifth, littering and cleansing. That's been dealt with in section 15, in particular 15.7 of the event management plan, which requires not only regular cleaning of the event site, but also the surrounding area. Finally, the police's general concerns. May I please put on record the applicant's thanks to PC Stewart and his police colleagues. I think it's fair to say that the parties were originally some distance apart, but I'm pleased to report that after a lot of helpful discussions, the applicant is now very substantially in agreement with PC Stewart. In respect of the CCTV monitoring raised by PC Stewart, the applicant would like that requirement to kick in when the capacity reaches 1,250, whereas PC Stewart would like it to commence when the capacity is at 501. Aside from a single sexual entertainment venue, I can't think of a single license which has this requirement conditioned. It's something much larger event organisers may have the resources to implement, but certainly not with a capacity as low as 1,250, which is what the applicant is volunteering, and definitely not at 501. In simple terms, the applicant thinks that 1,250 is more proportionate and means that the SIA resource is better used as security roaming and supervising the site rather than sat in front of a monitor. But of course, that's a matter for you, Chair. In respect of the August bank holiday weekend, the applicant would submit that now Notting Hill has been cancelled, that weekend is lower risk, but of course the applicant will keep that under constant review. That risk assessment will almost certainly result in high levels of SIA operatives on duty that weekend. However, going as far to ticket the whole site this weekend would compromise the underlying principles that Ed highlighted earlier, that this event is an accessible and inclusive event to a broad audience of all ages and all backgrounds, all times. Ticketing or otherwise imposed blanket costs or restrictions to entering the site would result in barriers to entry, compromising those key objectives. The applicant has a great deal of experience judging and managing expected numbers attending the event, and Section 13 of the EMP in a separate crowd management plan has been devised and can adequately deal with the Notting Hill Carnival, or what was the Notting Hill Carnival weekend. And if I may ask Ed to address you on that briefly, and then I'll very briefly mention policy, Chair, and then I'll 1 minute summing up and then I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Yes, I mean, just to kind of just take on the point around the ticketing, the bank holiday weekend, you know, we have run, you know, the ethos of behind our events and festivals is that they're free to access, and then you have to buy a ticket to see a show, and that free to access we feel is really important. And I think it's just worth noting that we have run on the South Bank for many years the events on the same weekend as the London Marathon, which traditionally we had a lot of people coming over the bridges at the end of the London Marathon. We didn't have to ticket it for that particular weekend. We dealt with any crowd management successfully with increased provision, which we'd almost certainly, as Jack said, expect to put on for that bank holiday weekend, but we never needed to actually ticket entry. And similarly with our events in Leicester Square and Trafalgar Square at Christmas, again for Westminster, they are free to enter. And clearly at that time, there's an awful lot of other competing events, whether it's film premieres or anything else that have taken place during that time. And again, we've never had the need to ticket entry. We run a robust continued risk assessment of our sites. We'd be very happy to commit to bringing that weekend to the bi-monthly SAG meetings near the time to discuss what the right resource should be. But we feel strongly that it would be disproportionate to ticket or as a condition to ticket that particular weekend, and it does go against both our experience at doing events similar to this and also the ethos of the event as well.
Thank you, Ed. On policy, Chair, I was going to address you on it, but you've seen I've included some extracts in my written submissions where you'll see the policy recognises the wider cultural benefit this type of entertainment can have in Hammersmith and Fulham, and I'd ask you to bear that in mind, please. And then just to finish, although we would welcome the opportunity to answer questions, and I imagine there will be some, may I finish now by inviting you to grant this time-limited premises licence for just 12 weeks to one of the UK's most experienced, trusted and professional events operators that hopes to bring back some of London's much-missed cultural entertainment offer in your borough this summer. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Speaker, and Sir Bartlam as well. I would now like to invite the committee, please, Councillor Smith and Councillor Sorley, to ask questions of any party about the application and the issues that have been raised so far. Who would like to start? Councillor Thorley.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of the matters I wanted to raise have been addressed through the various representations. I think the only thing that Jack, I may have missed it, so apologies if I did. Health and safety mentioned that I think proposed condition 25 had not been agreed, the exact wording regarding wine bottles, I think it was. Could you just confirm if the amended language as put forward by the health and safety officer is agreed?
Yeah, I'm grateful, Councillor. It is agreed in the wording sent by Mrs. Pater earlier today. I've got that in front of me if you'd like me to read it out to you.
If you could, and then Ms. Pater, if you could confirm subsequent to that you're satisfied, that would be very helpful. So, Jack, over to you.
Thank you. So the amended wording is no glass or crockery will be used for the service of food and drinks at the venue, apart from bottles of wine, which shall be served with 4 non-hyphen glass cups. Full stop. Tables will be cleared of empty bottles at regular and frequent intervals.
Ms. Pater, can you just confirm that that is the language you put forward and you're happy to agree to that condition as just read out?
Yes, this is the condition in the wording I sent, and I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've just got one final question, Chair. Councillor Wade made the point that, whilst I accept the applicant has a significant and long-established track record of operating these premises, each location is slightly different. And this, I believe it was mentioned by licensing, this would be the largest license for that venue in Hammersmith and Fulham. It does have 2 licensed premises you exit from Empress Place, the Prince Pub that was mentioned, and the Langtree. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what premises, what time they shut, but I just wondered if you could comment on how you have adapted your dispersal policy to take into account that was mentioned a different demographic maybe using the premises in the evening, and how those 2 sites have impacted really what you're thinking in terms of marshalling and moving people away from the site, and linking on to that, the point made about parking and litter and so on.
I'm happy to answer that, Councillor. If that's yeah, I mean, we've looked at this in detail, and actually with PC Stewart as well, and we've looked at our dispersal plan. We've upped numbers in terms of our overall stewarding provision. We've looked at how at certain capacities, higher capacities, we will have patrol stewarding resource that will be at the end of Emperor's Place and helping to direct people giving them the right directions to any public transport hubs. So essentially, whereby I suppose we started a number of weeks ago, and this has been the benefit of the collaboration with officers and agencies, where we started in a position whereby our stewarding plan was focused really on the site and the entrance to the site. We're now looking at a slightly nudged or pushed out stewarding provision at key times when it's needed to help disperse kind of further along at the end of Empress Place and direct people. There is signage. We have also agreed with the Eardley Court Resident Association that we're going to trial to start with some stewards on Eardley Crescent, sorry, and for the first 2 weeks, and we're going to understand the people movement. I mean, I think the whole point of this is, and we're totally understanding of this is a new event. We don't know how successful it's going to be. We need to see what the kind of peaks are and the low points. It's not going to be, and what I would tell people and tell the committee, it's not going to be we're going to open on the 15th of July and it's going to be at capacity immediately. It's not that kind of event. It needs to build up, So I think we have to see how it goes. But I do really want to reiterate the point that I made earlier, and I would hope that any other local authorities that have worked with us would support this view, which is that we always collaborate with local authorities and we're always fluid to how things unfold. For us, it's absolutely about that communication. As I say, that's why we suggested the bi-monthly SAG meetings. So the dispersal plan has improved. It's got better. It no doubt will change again as the event starts. In terms of just worth also just talking about cleansing and some of the other issues that Councillor Wade did mention, there's a full cleansing and litter picking up plan within the site. Obviously, people aren't allowed off our site with any containers or alcohol, so that's taken from them anyway at the exit of our site. As Jack has already said, there's an understanding that we might need to do litter pitting outside of our site in the immediate vicinity. So that we are comfortable with. In terms of toilet numbers, I think was another thing that Councillor Wade may have mentioned. We've got sufficient toilet provision in the site to align with the Purple Guide, which is the event kind of a guide. We've got 24 female toilets, we've got over 20 male toilets, we've got 2 accessible. So we're comfortable with our toilet provision within the site. Another thing I think that Councillor Wade did mention was a 24-hour phone number. This is something that we do as a matter of course. So any local residents and stakeholders will have access to a telephone number that our site manager holds, so they can get hold of our site manager any time of day if there are any concerns. So sorry, that was a slightly long-winded way of answering your question, Councillor, but I just wanted to take some of the other points that were raised by Councillor Wade as well.
It's appreciated going to that level of detail. I think one thing that comes across here for me is, and I think Simon made the point, is there are things that, if you will, we would normally condition, but because this event, as you rightly point out, is something that is going to be kind of ever changing and evolving, we as a committee, or certainly I feel as a committee member, there's a lot of, I'm relying a lot on the existing procedures you have in place, the existing knowledge, and these bi-monthly SAG meetings. So I just want to understand a little bit more about what's the membership of this committee. Could various councillors, could various residents groups get involved with this? How would they feed in their experience about what's going right on the ground and what's going wrong on the ground and what could perhaps be improved?
I think it may be that one of your officers, perhaps Anna, could comment more on that. But the SAG, from our point of view, the SAG is the meeting of all the key officers from LBHF, and it could include KNC as well. And that's the other day we had over, I think, 40 people on it, and it's all the different departments from LBHF in terms of environmental health and public safety, and also includes agencies like the MPS as well. I'm sure, depending on what your officer said, there'll be an opportunity for councillors to input in and give feedback into that SAG as well.
And are you able to speak to that point and also link to that not only the membership of it, but how outcomes and decisions are communicated with local residents if they're unable to attend the meeting?
The local residents would not normally be members of the
Ms. Patter? Are you with us, Ms. Patter? Can you please repeat?
Hello. Okay, my microphone is on. Okay.
We can hear you.
One second, I have some technical problem. Okay. So what I was saying was that local residents would not normally be a part of a safety advisory group. However, through different teams of the council, we do have good channels and opportunities to take up any complaints that come from the local residents, whether they would be related to health and safety or noise and nuisance. So we could address those by all means at the SAG meetings as well.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you. Sorry, Ed, you wanted to...
No, sorry. I would also just say that from our point of view, we will be continuing to engage with local residents associations as well. In fact, we've got a meeting, I think, on Wednesday with the Eardley Crescent Residents Association to update them on plans. And I'm sure we would be happy to continue to meet those residents associations virtually, which is what we've been doing throughout the event. And in fact, we've done that before in other events, and it can prove to be very useful to get kind of feedback, I suppose, in real time.
In relation to this point, sorry, Councillor Thorley, Ms. Patter, just to confirm, with the SAG meetings, do we have representatives from RBKC or, I mean, Councillor Wade?
Yes, I guess that would depend on the chair, because the chair usually decides who would participate, and I guess in such instances, it would be permissible for people, from outside of the council also to attend if they have a good justification for that, if there is a crossover of the interest and the residents of that borough are also affected potentially. So
I'm sorry to keep on putting my hand up. I am aware, I feel like I'm at school. I am aware that Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, but actually there is a local policing presence on the SAG, and Claire McCarthy, who's the local chief inspector, who actually I think represents KNC and LBHF, she or one of her colleagues is invited to the SAG, so there'll be a very natural, you know, kind of ability to get feedback from, you know, if there's any ASB or kind of feedback from local policing into that SAG, perhaps via her or her colleagues.
Can you please confirm that that is the case, Ms. Patter?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Thorley, please carry on.
I've got one more question for the police, but I've talked enough, so I will happily hand back to you and Councillor Smith, Chair.
Or you're going to be asking the question later then?
I'm very quickly asking now, so I'm all done. Sorry, PC Stewart, there's a question for you relating to this CCTV problem we have, because obviously there's a request for 1,200 and you're asking for 501. Yeah, I understand the argument the applicant is making in terms of having a better presence on the ground and not having resources in a control centre when actually they would be more adequate there. I just would be intrigued to get your take on that. Why the 501 rather than the 1,200? Oh, I can't hear you.
Mr. Stewart, I think we cannot hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Perfect.
Excellent, apologies. I'm usually the techie one as well. I think initially, ideally, we would like the CCTV monitored at all times. However, as a compromise, we obviously came down to 501. The applicant initially offered 2,000 capacity. I offered 500, they offered 1,250. The argument that someone's better served on the ground than in the CCTV room, I would argue against that. A person sat monitoring CCTV can cover a lot more ground than somebody walking around the site. Someone sat in front of the monitors who can monitor several areas at once would be able to direct sufficient resources where they need to be. So I'd argue against that point completely. So ideally, that's why we'd ask for someone to be there at all times. However, I appreciate there is a certain amount of pragmatism that we have to allow. And obviously there is a potential issue that they might be sat there when there's limited numbers of capacity on the site. Other events such as this within the borough, such as Queen's Club or Polo in the Park, or other larger scale events across London do have a continuously monitored control room. And this is a sort of event where that would benefit from, whether that's from proactive crime detection or whether there's a missing child, bearing in mind it's a child-friendly event during the earlier hours. The use of someone watching that CCTV could greatly increase the ability to deal with situations as they arise. And it's not just obviously crime prevention, there's counter-terrorism implications where they could be trying to monitor for anyone looking to do hostile reconnaissance. It has endless sort of benefits. So like I said, ideally we'd want it monitored at all time, but I appreciate there was a compromise to be raised. And by the time there's 1,250 people in there, the question could be, have we already missed an opportunity to potentially prevent something from happening? So obviously I would ask the committee, obviously do take consideration to what we are asking for in regards to why we want it. We're not trying to be overly burdensome by asking for this to be in position, but I think that one person behind a monitor would be more beneficial than 5 or 6 SIA actually patrolling the site itself. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Sorry, are we able to come back on that at some stage?
Yeah, I had Ed Sig with the hand as well, so yes, whoever wants to go.
Thank you, and I'm sorry it's not quite in line with the procedure, but I hope it will help. The events that PC Stewart cited as examples are much larger than the events we're proposing, particularly when we say we're looking at introducing this requirement at capacity of 1,250. Queen's is much larger than that. And I think Ed wanted to address you on that point, particularly bearing in mind his extensive experience.
Can we please try and compromise on this point? I mean, we've heard how PC Stewart, I mean, we've heard the reasons that they have in terms of this request. So
yeah, we've tried our best. Sorry, we've tried our best to compromise, and it was the only outstanding bit apart from the bank holiday weekend. I mean, Chair, if I may, I guess this one may be a matter for you. We've proposed 1,250. PC Stewart's proposed 501. We'd prefer it to be 1,250, but of course, that one's for you.
I think, if I may, just from our point of view, I think that I graciously disagree with some of what PC Stewart said, just in terms of, I think that in our 21 years of experience of running these events, you often can't get the atmosphere and pick up on small little things when somebody's at the end of a camera in a way that you can when there are people on the ground looking at people. So we have absolutely no issues at all with the proposal to use CCTV, have it continuously monitored, but at a certain capacity we feel that is reasonable and proportionate. I think at 501, that's, you know, suggesting that there's plenty of bars and pubs and other events and other premises that have a capacity of that, which is a relatively small capacity in terms of licensed premises, and don't have a requirement to have a continuously monitored CCTV system. So I think there's an element of proportionality on our part, from our point of view, and also we genuinely believe that at that capacity, it would be, the stats steward would be better spent out on the site, looking at things, dealing with instances, checking that, you know, everybody's okay, rather than in a site office monitoring the CCTV at that particular capacity. And that's why we proposed a compromise position of 1,250 and above.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillors, if I may sorry, Councillor, if I may just very brief, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that they compromise the site security in the site to remove that one person and put them in a CCTV control room. It should be based upon, you know, that should be an extra person in that site. I wouldn't want to be taking people away from elsewhere to cover that position. That isn't what the request is, just to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Councillor Smith, have you got
Thank you, Chair. I think the representations and the questions have pretty much filled in all the gaps on all the things. I think we may have some stuff to discuss, but I'm not sure there's anything I can raise at this point that's going to be helpful.
Thank you very
Sorry,
much.
Councillor, just one more. I just had a message from Ian Rudge. He's unable to raise his hand. He might have some perspective from a CT point of view. If you'd like to ask him if he has any.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I'm wondering whether it's worth us using the breakout room, because I think it's relevant in terms of Appendix 1. I would like to suggest that we all move to a breakout room to discuss Appendix 1 in more detail. Does the committee agree?
I agree with that, Chair.
No, I'm happy with that, Chair.
Okay. I hope as well that, of course, PC Stewart and Mr. Ian Rudge and the applicants and the representatives of Bilger can join us, please. So can I please ask our committee coordinator to help us with this?
Yeah, just one sec, Chair.
So we're going to be moving to a breakout room. So for other people joining us here this evening, I would appreciate you could please wait a little bit while we discuss this in a separate room. And I think it's important to reiterate that we have got to discuss this in a separate room, because this is an exempt appendix under the Section 14 of the Licensing Act 2003, Regulation 2004. It's exempt from publication and discussion of the contents of the appendix, and requires the exclusion of the press and public from the hearing. So thanks for your patience.
Okay, I'm just going to move everyone to the room now.
Thank you very much.
And just for the people who are left in the main meeting, can you just mute your microphones and just be patient with us while we have this private breakout session? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much all for your patience. Have we got all parties with us? Are we missing anyone? I'm just looking at the people with us.
I think Mr. Rudge is still missing, Chair.
Okay, so shall we wait for Mr. Raj?
Yeah. Oh, he's here now.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much all for your patience. Okay, so back to the questions and comments. Have you got further questions, comments, Councillor Thorley, Councillor Smith?
Not for me, Chair.
No? Okay. I would like to ask Councillor Wade.
Yes, I do. I think that what's interesting is the fact that the previous events that the applicant has referred to, South Bank, Edinburgh Festival, Leicester Square, these are large venues. Actually, what we're looking at here is a unique constrained site close to residential property, whether it's Sidlesham Road or Erdley Crescent. And I really would like to see a commitment that we're going to see effective marshalling on our BKC side. I'm concerned about, for example, if there was an evacuation process, because if it's a London-wide advertised event and it's a sunny day and a lot of families turn up, whether or not Empress Place with the zigzag is going to have the capacity. You know, what happens if there is an incident and you have dispersal and you're directing them towards RBKC? I'm very concerned that RBKC hasn't had representation or effective representation on SAG, because this venue is effectively probably the last place in Hammersmith and Fulham, and just literally adjacent to Earl's Court, and is using the name Earl's Court. We're very generous with the name, but you know, it would be nice to see a little bit more support for us.
In relation to this point, would you like to take?
I mean, but it's also the fact that I understand measures have been put in place about Delta variants, etc. But how are you effectively going to handle the people who come in the evening and perhaps are drinking? How are you going to be able to maintain effective social distancing? So it's those things, but marshalling, you've got to get marshalling right. While you've been away, I've actually been in contact with PC Nick Hamer, who's responsible for Redcliffe, Earl's Court wards, and he knew nothing about the SAG meeting. He should be involved. He is your key person to deal with, and his email is in the chat. And Tim Davis of Environmental Health, because he'll be dealing with the noise. But don't go down Erdley Crescent, don't go down Kempsford Gardens, don't go down Kramer Mews. You'll find yourself in an old people's home. Make sure they go down Old Brompton Road and up Warwick Road. So I would like some answers, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. I had a question for you. So you've mentioned two names of two representatives that you would like to see present
at the SAG meeting. Yes.
So
I put them in the chat.
I'm just checking the chat, and I cannot see them myself. All
right. It's basically it's Sergeant Nick Hamer, who is the sergeant. He's the ward. He represents 3 wards in Kensington and Chelsea, but they are the wards that are going to be affected by this. So it's Earl's Court, Redcliffe, because if you have dispersal along Old Brompton Road, people will get lost. People might go into the cemetery, for example. That would be in Redcliffe. I think we do need, so do liaise with him, and he is a person that I know hasn't been invited. Tim Davis is our head of environmental services in RBKC. So he would be able, he's the person who would deal with everything from waste to noise. So if anybody is going to, I think it would be cooperative, I think it would be collaborative. And if this is going to go on for 12 weeks and everybody wants it to be a success, that we have to get these things right. If you get these things right, it will work. If you don't, you will have problems.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Thank you for your comments. One last question for Mr. Bartlam or Mr. Taylor. Do you want to comment on Councillor Wade?
Yes,
concerns?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wade. I hope I've got all the points, but just to run through, I think, my notes on it. In terms of the other sites and our other event sites, actually, most of them are smaller than the site at Earls Court, but also it's worth just noting that the South Bank site we ran that for 11 years on, there's two very large blocks of flats there. There's County Hall, there's about 600 people living in County Hall, and also a building called the White House, which sits just behind the Royal Festival Hall. And we never in 11 years had any official complaints lodged, either in terms of noise or in terms of ASB with the local authority, Lambeth. So I think that has to say something. I accept it's a new event and it's a new event site, but
Can I just, sorry, Ed, we already have problems with noise from the Prince.
Okay, but
so I'm just saying, and you
please,
are,
if we can keep your comments about the chair, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
So there's that point, and indeed our Edinburgh sites also are very much in kind of often residential areas. In terms of engagement, I can't comment in terms of SAG participants, but I can. It's worth on record saying that we Underbelly and Earls Court Development Company have now had, I think, over 5-6 different meetings with residents associations, be that Erdley Crescent Residents Association, Earls Court Residents Association, Earls Court Society, where we've had webinars, and I think, Councillor Wade, you've been on a number of them, with a number of different residents and stakeholders, and we've listened to people's concerns, and we are absolutely open to continuing to have that engagement. But I think it is important to note that that engagement has been there, we'll continue to have it. We totally understand the concerns around Erdley Crescent in particular. As I say, we've tried to address those with signage, there'll be comments, there'll be all of our kind of communications on social media and on our website will tell people not to go that way. And as I say, there's a commitment to trial some stewards on Erdley Crescent for the first part of the event to see when we begin to understand what the crowd flow is. In terms of social distancing, we'll run the site in a socially distanced way when we need to, and if we are advised to, and obviously we'll be opening in the current roadmap 3 stage. As I say, we've got experience of doing this. We did it last year. We had 3 sites, one in Wimbledon Park, one on the South Bank, one in Victoria Park. We were the first event company to do pop-up street food festivals in a socially distanced way. So I think we understand how to do that. And finally, just going back to marshalling and stewarding, we completely agree. We completely agree that that needs to work. I go back to what I've said before. There's a commitment on our side to continually assess our plans and our procedures and to communicate and collaborate with stakeholders. And we're happy for those to be RBKC stakeholders and local stakeholders just as much as LBHF.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bartlam. If there are no further questions and comments from the committee members, I see nothing. Okay, then I'm happy. Well, I would like to invite everyone to sum up, please. Can I please invite the parties to sum up as briefly as possible and in the following order? We have the licensing officer, and then we'll have Mr. Simon Boniface from Noise Nuisance, PC Tom Stewart together with Mr. Ian Rudge, Councillor Linda Wade, and finally the applicant or the applicant representative. Ms. Bitru, would you like to sum up, please?
Yes, nothing further from licensing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, I would now like to invite, yes, sorry, I missed Ms. Anna Patter in my introduction of the summing up. Ms. Patter, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you very much. I have no further concerns, and I trust, in continued cooperation with the events organizers, and for the dynamic risk assessment to be applied at all stages, of this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patter. I would now like to invite Mr. Simon Boniface from Nuisance, please.
Good evening again. Yes, I've now had the opportunity to review condition 17 as discussed and agreed with the police. That does go some way to reassure us about some dispersal issues. With dispersal, stewards required when the capacity reaches 1,000 or more after 9 p.m. How that's implemented will be the relevant factor in terms of how it mitigates any impact on the residents. And there's only one further issue I'd like to raise or request. Proposed condition 3 relates to the premises license holder ensuring the event management plan is presented to all parties and for their comments, and as an ongoing working document. It lists the parts of the event management plan from A to H, and if possible we'd like to add a specific reference to the noise management plan. If that could be added to the contents of the event management plan, I'd be grateful.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Boniface. I would now like to invite PC Tom Stewart together with Mr. Ian Raj.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take up too much time. Obviously, we've agreed many conditions with the applicant going forward. We are now more satisfied with the level of security they plan on providing as a minimum. We would expect them as a responsible operator to far exceed those numbers as and when required. Obviously, still outstanding is the CCTV consideration, but obviously I'm minded to allow the committee to make their decision in regards to that. Just worth noting, obviously the policing team covers Hammersmith, Fulham, Kensington, Chelsea, and Westminster. We are a tri-BCU, so officers from Kensington, Chelsea are aware of the event, including neighbourhood inspector and chief inspector, and I'll be the single point of contact in regards to any ongoing SAGs. And obviously I can disseminate any information that needs to be given directly to any of the ward sergeants. I'm happy to do that going forward with the sort of upcoming SAGs and throughout the event if granted. But nothing further from myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Mr. Raj, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. All I really wanted to say was that, we continue to engage with the applicants on counter-terrorism measures, and we'll certainly do our best to support them. But I would just emphasise that, the threat is real, it's unpredictable, and publicly accessible locations are very attractive to those with hostile intent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roach, and thank you as well, Ms. Stewart, for addressing the concerns of Councillor Wade in relation to communication with Sergeant Nick Harney, if I got his name right. I would now like to invite Councillor Linda Wade to sum up, please. You've got up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think, Chair, that it's not just Erdley Crescent, it's Kempsford Gardens, Cramer Mews. We have to make sure that the traffic goes along Old Brompton Road and up Warwick Road. The road has the capacity, and there's got to be marshalling to prevent those 3 residential streets being used. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wade. I would now like to invite, Mr. Jack Quigley, please, over to you.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors. You've heard throughout this evening that this event is supported, and rightly so, providing the proper safeguards are in place. The applicant is extremely grateful to the SAG for their expert input and collaboration, which will continue throughout the event period to ensure that those safeguards are implemented planning to ensure London Wonderground is a huge success for Hammersmith.
I've got problems with the sound. Is it only me, or can you please speak up?
Sorry, Chair.
That's great.
I was saying that the implemented safeguards will ensure that London Wonderground is a huge success for Hammersmith and Fulham, that the event is safe and that it contributes to local culture this summer, and that the event promotes all four licensing objectives. To use Councillor Wade's phrase, this event needs to be done right. We agree with that and are completely confident it will be, particularly now that all the really helpful SAG and resident association input has been incorporated into the event planning and is now properly conditioned following PC Stewart's helpful email earlier this afternoon. Chair, I'm just going to check in with Ed to see if he wants to add anything to that, but otherwise that's it from me. Thank you very much.
No, I just like to say thank you very much. And as I say, without trying to repeat the words communicate and collaborate, but I will again for the final time, that is very much our intention. And just finally, on terms of the grace-based dispersal, I know Councillor Wade's concerned, I would just continue to point committee to the condition 17 that we've agreed with Tom Stewart, which very much talks about the fact there will be a stewarding present to look at dispersal, ingress and egress, and direct people accordingly to the nearest.
Okay, well, thank you very much all. The committee with Councillor Smith and Councillor Thorley will now retire to take its decision. You are all welcome to remain in the meeting to hear the committee's decision. However, this may take some time. If you don't want to wait, a summary decision will be published on the Council's website tomorrow morning. Okay, can I invite Councillor Thorley and Councillor Smith to please join me in the other room? Thank you very much. Okay. Hello again. Thank you very much all for your patience. Can you hear me okay? Yes, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm now going to read out the decision following the committee's deliberation. The committee has considered an application for the grant of a premises license from the 14th of July 2021 to the 26th of September 2021 under the Licensing Act 2003. In summary, the committee has decided, after taking into account all of the individual circumstances of this case and the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, to grant the application as follows. The following licensable activities: performance of dance indoors and outdoors, exhibition of a film indoors and outdoors, performance of live music indoors and outdoors, playing of recorded music indoors and outdoors, entertainment similar to music or dance indoors and outdoors, performance for play indoors and outdoors. Sunday to Wednesday from 10:30 a.m. to 2200 hours, Thursday to Saturday from 10:30 a.m. to 23:30 hours. Sale of alcohol on the premises only Monday to Sunday from 12 o'clock to 2300 hours. That the hours the premises will be open to the public will be as follows: Sunday to Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 2300 hours, and from Thursday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to midnight. The license is subject to any mandatory conditions. Also modify the conditions of the license volunteered by the applicant in the operating schedule by altering or omitting or adding them, including amendments to condition 3 as requested by the Noise and Nuisance Officer, add the conditions proposed by the police as amended and agreed by the applicant, add the proposed condition 1 by the police and conditions to deal with counter-terrorism concerns such as training of staff, add the conditions proposed by the Health and Safety Officer and agreed by the applicant. The license becomes operational with immediate effect. If problems are experienced, then an application for a review of the premises license can be made. A copy of the committee's full decision, including its reasons and the full text of the conditions added to the license, will be sent to the parties forthwith. If the applicant is unhappy with the decision, they are entitled to appeal to the magistrate's court within 21 days from the date of notification of the full decision. I'd like to thank everyone for attending or watching tonight's meeting. And as I said, the summary of the decision will be published on our website, and a full decision letter setting out the reasons for the decision will be sent to all parties in due course.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair and Councillors. I lost connectivity very briefly during that. Can I first, very quickly clarify, were the hours granted as applied for? I think they
Yes.
were. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
On the amendment to police condition 1, the CCTV monitoring, were you with PC Stewart on that?
Yes.
And that it kicks in at
Yes.
5:01. I wasn't clear on that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, with
That's
the
helpful.
Stewart's request, yes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all. Good evening.
Thank you very much.